New research claims most of the baby food sold in top U.S. grocery stores is unhealthy, loaded with sugar and salt.
Britain's Brexit psychosis continues to expose Britain's massive vulnerabilities. Having decided to do Brexit after a very divisive referendum campaign, which was advisory, it wasn't a decision in law, and we now know that Theresa May, the Prime Minister, made the decision to leave the European Union when she signed the notification to the EU. And so we never had a proper decision. We never had a plan. But for whatever reason, the Conservative Party, who were in power, were compelled to keep pushing Brexit, even though it was obviously enormously problematic and also detrimental, because it was deciding to put trade barriers between us and our biggest market. Now that Trump has won again, we are able to really look at what a superpower like USA has options to do, because the United States of America is self-sufficient in food and energy. It doesn't actually need any other countries to survive, and it's also huge. So it can order the world around, and that's largely what has been going on since the last war in particular. But Trump is one of the worst people because he wants to do a Brexit for the United States and leave the world and just focus on USA. And that is very bad for the world because we've all been used to globalization. And Brexit was based on globalization, free trade, and particularly wanting free trade with the USA, or certain groups of the Conservatives in particular, plus Nigel Farage's party, wanted that free trade deal with America. The downsides of the free trade with America have never really been explained to the British public. But in essence, in the area that I'm interested in, and really you ought to be interested in, because farming and food, you have to eat food, is inextricably linked to farming and public health, the National Health Service, all of those things, the environment. And the deal with America means a lowering of standards because America's food system is very, very different to ours. And it means giving up what we have become used to.
New research claims most of the baby food sold in top U.S. grocery stores is unhealthy, loaded with sugar and salt. The study from the George Institute of Global Health, published in the peer-reviewed journal Nutrients, did not name any specific products, but Meg Oliver talked with one mom who's not surprised.
Danielle DeLoe lives in Connecticut, a full-time working mom with 4 kids under the age of 7. Proper nutrition is a top priority.
How often do you buy baby food from the grocery store?
Never. We don't buy baby food from the grocery store.
Why not?
We can't trust it. There's too many additives. Even if it says it's organic, I just don't know what's in it.
A new study found 60% of baby foods sold in major U.S. grocery chains are unhealthy and don't meet nutritional standards set by the World Health Organization. Dr. Ellie Erickson is a pediatrician at Duke University.
What does unhealthy mean in this study?
So in this study, what they seem to be showing is that most of the processed baby foods that are sold in grocery stores contain very processed ingredients, high levels of salt, sugar, and fat.
In fact, according to the study, 44% of the foods exceeded total sugar requirements, 70% of the items failed to meet protein requirements, and 25% did not meet calorie recommendations. Some of the leading infant food pouches currently have more sugar than a serving of Lucky Charms.
It is not possible to have a Brexit and then do as we want. We either have to be part of the European Union or follow European Union rules, or we become the 51st state of the USA in effect. But But ultimately, Britain can't survive on her own. We don't have the commodities to exist on our own with a population of 68 million people. So we have to rely on trade with other countries, which is why it makes sense for us to be part of the European Union. But now Trump is in power, and Keir Starmer is not showing signs of delivering his promises on a Brexit reset and getting back closer to the European Union. There's warm words, but there's little action. I had hoped that he would work quickly to get a veterinary agreement, and that would begin the journey back in. However, what we're seeing is a digging in and defending of the last government's trade deals, and now with the budget, we're seeing preparation for what is a destabilisation of our food and farming system. And that is deeply concerning. However, some commentators think that Trump presidency means that we have to go back and admit that Brexit has failed and try and get back within the EU. Trade expert David Hennig has said as much. And also on Newsnight,
real hardliner. He's not a free trader. He's a great believer in tariffs. I'm a pessimist. I mean, I hear also businesses saying this is all a giant bluff to get better deals. I think that's a bit of hope over experience.
Copium.
Trump did tariffs in his first term on world exports to America of steel and aluminium. He wants to go much bigger this time. He had a tariff war with China last time. He believes in it. I don't think it's a bluff. I think he will do it.
So if you're Britain now, and you've got the European Union saying, without naming, we've got a list now of retaliatory tariffs, and they're going to slap them on the table to focus Donald Trump's mind. What is the UK strategy now?
Well,
do we try and cut a deal at the White House, a side deal, or do we go in with the rest of the G7 and try and focus Donald Trump's mind?
I don't think there are any free lunches with the Donald Trump White House. If you try and cut a deal with him, they might offer a free trade deal. But if it's anything like the deal they were touting back in 2017 or so, it's a deal which basically destroys the British agricultural sector. Chlorinated chicken, hormone-treated beef, everything comes in. And I just don't think any British government can accept that. And I think the only place to go is to line up with the Europeans, because Trump doesn't offer gifts to people, not even the Brits. And unless we line up with the Europeans, we will get the same tariffs, but we'll have no strength, no position.
Trump's got a bit of a thing about the EU, doesn't he? He
says the EU is worse than China.
Yeah.
That's what he said in his first term.
So this opens up, John, some of those Brexit wounds that the Labour Party have just tried to park and forget about, and suddenly, perhaps somewhat unexpectedly, up it pops again.
Yeah, they're going to find it difficult, really difficult, particularly given some of the remarks that his Keir Starmer's colleagues have made about Donald Trump. I mean, very awkward first year, I think.
Yeah. We don't know what is going to happen. There are a lot of very, very unhappy farmers and rural voters and business people. The budget has been a disaster for business. The truth is that small and medium-sized businesses in particular have been really hit hard by the budget. And the farm tax, as they're calling it, is a disaster for our family farm system. Even the supermarkets have spoken out to say how bad it is for our food security, and that it will ensure food problems and empty shelves. On top of this, because of the flooding in Spain and Morocco, there has been significant damage. To have inheritance tax on farms, and that was changed in 1992 when we signed the Maastricht Treaty. And the European Union became the European Union. And that was done for a reason of fairness. And that's what the European Union is all about, so that all countries have got a level playing field. The other rationale behind not penalising family farms with inheritance tax is about food security. The whole reason for the European Union and its basic principles, core principles, were learnt during the war, And as there were so many food problems and people were facing incredible food shortages, the decision around the CAP and food security were at the central part of the European Union. And that meant that farms were protected from inheritance tax. This has had huge advantages for consumers because prices have been driven down year on year. Quality has got better, variety has got better. But to now bring in an inheritance tax to farms who have suffered enormously as a result of a very powerful supermarket corporations within this country and Brexit reality, which I will remind you, I have told you many times what Brexit's done to farming, but we've lost freedom of movement. We've lost free trade with our biggest market. We have had imports coming in undercutting us. So we've also lost access to the CAP and food subsidies. And there's been an awful a lot of shocks and change for farmers. And so to now invoke inheritance tax means that family farms are not going to be able to survive. The threshold is incredibly low. Even a house with half an acre where I live, an ordinary 3-bedroomed house with half an acre, would be worth close to £1 million. So you have to have some idea of a farm which is producing your food was going to be worth significantly more than that, but its value is immaterial because it doesn't get sold. The reason that land has gone up in price is because of the growing population. Farmers have continued with very low profits because their assets and their farm has held it together. By introducing an inheritance tax, it means that farms will be forced to sell, and then that will likely favour the big corporations who will want to come in and bring more factory farms here. We've already had over 200 factory farms open since Brexit was voted in, and other developments that won't be farms, that won't look after the countryside, that won't produce food. Housing, I accept we need some housing, but if it's a mass closure of farms, our food security is going to be under threat. Who will feed us? As Vladimir Putin is now going to be emboldened by Trump in the White House, he may well decide to stomp on further into Europe, and we are going to be isolated, alienated, and without food security. So I am very much opposed to the farm tax, and I really hope this government reconsiders this disastrous decision. There will continue to be protests and pressure from farms and rural communities. I have never known the rural communities so united in being against what the Labour Party have introduced with this budget. Many Remainers think the farm tax is good because people like James Dyson can be taxed. It's highly likely that James Dyson's holdings are in trust anyway. I don't know, obviously, but I would imagine he's so wealthy that he would have some advice to put it into trust. And even if he doesn't, he can afford the inheritance tax because he's got other businesses and he has the wealth behind him. But it means that this tax penalises ordinary farmers, ordinary family farms and ordinary businesses just to penalise one man, which makes no sense. But I would also add that Dyson's contribution to our food system is very positive. He's doing very good things with his farms, he's employing people, and he's bringing innovation to produce food like strawberries all year round. So I cannot criticise what he does in farming. I'd certainly disagree with him on Brexit. but not with what he's doing with farming, because food is such an important commodity for a country, particularly a country that wants to be sovereign. If you don't have food sovereignty, you don't have sovereignty. It's going to be an interesting time going forward. Perhaps more people will realise that Brexit is a disaster because of the crossroads that we are at. There's many thinking that we need to do more Brexit and leave the ECHR. There's some that believe that, not many I should say, a few. And then there's others, more than half want to rejoin. And then there's others who think that it's done. Well, Brexit isn't done. It'll never be done. It'll carry on causing problems for us until we decide to rejoin, because going it alone is like deciding to go onto a rugby pitch as a baby when you've got huge players on there who can easily knock you out. Britain is a very small country, and it makes no sense what we're doing with Brexit. It certainly makes no sense that a Labour government is continuing with the Conservative hard Brexit.
Hello, beautiful.